Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today in my garage while I give you a tour of different plants, bulbs, corms, and tubers that I have overwintering in here. So let's go. So I gave you a tour of all the things that I had going on in here in terms of gardening sometime during the month of December. And I figured I might as well give you another tour just to show you how things are progressing as we head into the end of January and into the beginning of February. I've been babying everything that I have in here. It's not a lot of effort, but there is a little bit of effort involved just to ensure that my plants are still looking good and staying alive. So I wanted to show you around in here just so you have an idea of what I have going on. Over here are a couple of shelving units, and I have a lot of plants that I'm able to keep on these two shelving units. I love being able to use the vertical space. I didn't do this last year. Last year, I overwintered my plants down under here, and I only had a couple of small shelves. So I'm really enjoying having all this extra space. And there's still room in here in the garage for my car to come in, and these plants are not affected. And then this year, I'm using some extra space on this side, which I'm really enjoying. I still have spring bulbs to get into pots, and honestly, I'm okay with that at this point for the simple reason that, and I'll show you in a little while, I have spring bulbs that have really sprouted and have taken off. It's a little too early for here in New Hampshire, so I'm fine with not having tackled that project yet. Over here are a bunch of boxes of my dahlias and some other plants that I will go over with you. And then I basically have my mixing station for mixing up peat moss, vermiculite, perlite, which I use for my seed starting mixes as well as my potting mixes. I have a bag of perlite here. I have a couple of totes. This one has perlite in it, and this one has vermiculite. And so this really all works out well for what I'm doing indoors in my grow area. I just come out here, mix up what I need, bring that inside. And then over here are just some of my seed starting supplies. Most of my seed starting supplies are upstairs in my barn, but I like to keep some of it in here so that I have easy access to it as I'm working in my grow room. So what I'm going to do is place some plants on the table and just walk through what my plans are for the plant in terms of taking care of them over the next few months. I made a short recently that talked about some mums that I saved from a friend of mine. Well, I was able to divide those mums and get them potted up, and I've kept them in my garage, and look how great they look. I don't have any special lights that are set up in my garage, but the plants look wonderful. And I've been making sure that they're not drying out. The key with any of the potted plants is giving them water, but not too much water. Too much water would cause the plants to rot. Too little water would cause the plants to dry. So it's the matter of finding the right balance. So for each individual plant, I basically look at the soil. I can see that it's a dark brown color. That pretty much tells me it doesn't need any water. And the second test is picking up the pot. And I can definitely tell that both of these pots feel pretty heavy. So they don't need any water. And if I really wanted to, I could come in and cut off some of the dead pieces here, but I'm okay with leaving them on there. So I'm not going to worry about that. And what I'm planning to do over the next few weeks is come in here and just for fun, I'm going to start taking cuttings off of these mums and I'm going to start rooting them. And I'm either going to root them on heat mats in the garage or heat mats in my house. I haven't decided yet. The big thing is I want to make sure that I'm not bringing any sort of pests into my house because you never know with some of these potted plants, there could be little pests hidden underneath here. And I don't want to introduce that in my house. But regardless, that's my plan is to take cuttings and try to start rooting some more mums. And here where I live in New Hampshire Zone 5B, the best time to plant perennial mums is out in the ground in the springtime so that they have the whole entire spring, summer, and fall to establish a good, healthy root system in order to survive our harsh, cold climates. So I have 12 of these potted up that I was able to save from my friend, and I'm so excited that I did. Even though these are in proven winter pots, these are not proven winter plants. I'm just recycling the pots that I have. And these are Dusty Millers that I started from seed last year. And they are not hardy in my zone where I live. Occasionally, if we have a mild enough winter, they may overwinter here, but they're not typically hardy in this zone where I live. So I am experimenting and overwintering them in my garage. And it looks so far like my experiment is working. For the most part, the plants look good. And I'm doing the same exact test with every single pot that I check. I'm looking at the soil to see if it looks dry, if it's light brown versus a dark brown. And then also I'm picking up each individual pot. I can tell this one right here feels pretty heavy. The plant looks healthy. I'm not going to add any additional water to this plant. However, this plant does not look very good and it feels a little bit on the dry side. So what I'm going to do is evaluate each plant individually, and if they need some water, I'll give water. And at this time, I'm not going to cut these back, but that is an option if I wanted to, because if I do cut them back, it should force the plant to start growing from the bottom. And I do want to do that soon enough, but I'm not planning to do that today. But that's definitely in the plans within the next month. And then also the plan is to get these back out in my landscape or in pots in the early springtime, because Dusty Miller can take some cooler weather. So with this tray here, I have 3 pieces of a very sad looking millions of bells. I can tell this needs a little bit of water. This tells me with this process of overwintering millions of bells, it's not as easy as I had hoped. However, I do see some green pieces on here, like there's a small little piece right there, and I think they're at the nodes where I can see a little bit of green. So I really want to make sure I can get cuttings off of these, get them planted in some potting mix, and then see if I can root them, because I'd rather do that sooner than later and see if I can get a plant or 2 out of these. But I will keep you posted on that. And this right here is an ivy that I also am planning on taking cuttings and rooting, because why not? We might as well propagate the plants that we have and try to get more free plants that way. And then the rest of these plants are a perennial mum. I don't know the color. I think I have 2 different colors that I got from my friend who has a backyard plant nursery. She gave them to me in the late summer, early fall. So I'm overwintering them and they look great. And they're going to go out in my landscape in the springtime. These grasses, I'm almost positive, are perennial in my zone, but I got them in the late season, so I'm overwintering them. They were actually, it was one grass that was in a container, and it was all proven winter plants. So I divided it into 4 pieces, and you can see it's actually putting on some new growth, even though I've cut it back. So the key right now is to make sure that I can just keep it alive. And in that same container as this grass was calibrachoa, or millions of bells. They don't look great, so again, the plan is to water them and see if I can get some cuttings off of these plants. And then this over here is just one little sprig of a dichondra silver falls that I'm trying to overwinter. And I've had this plant for a few years. I've gotten cuttings off of it, so this is just one of the many cuttings. And I'm actually trying to propagate this plant indoors under my grow lights. I want a lot more of this plant in my life. It's not a perennial here where I live, so it's nice to be able to get these free annuals year to year. And this nice blue colored succulent plant came from my daughter from her college, and it's multiplied over time. And there are actually a couple of little babies in here. I need to spend the time. I need to come out here, clean it up, and try to root each of these individually. And I also have another container of them over here. They don't look as blue, but they need to get potted up into their own pots as well. And I think those would look really fun in like a little succulent garden this summer. You can clearly see some plants overwinter better than other plants, but that doesn't necessarily mean a plant is dead. So here are just some more of the Dusty Millers that look great and have overwintered fine. And then there's about 5 or 6 plants here that were also in that container with that grass. And I will get the name and put it up on the screen. And I basically, again, if I can try to get any piece on here that is alive, then I'm going to try to propagate it. But it's not looking very promising. And actually, now that I look here, I think this is a Dusty Miller. But they look so similar, it's hard to tell. And then this whole area doesn't look great either. But if you look carefully, and for me, this is the goal, is to keep them limping along. I can see a little bit of green here. I need to take advantage of that. I need to cut this at a node, put it in some, probably a little bit of vermiculite, and put it on a heat mat, bring it indoors, and try to get it going. Looks like a little bit more green over here. And even though these don't look great when you just look at them at face value, my point of the video for these plants is to show you that they actually are still alive. They're dormant. They don't look great, but I want to get them going and I want to see what I can do to make them look beautiful again. It's funny, these plants are doing the same thing. They're trying to reach for the light. So as I put them back on the shelving unit, I'm just going to flip them around so that they can reach for the light going this way. Here are more of those perennial mums that I got from my backyard nursery friend. And here are some more of the dichondra silver falls. And I mean, I have enough plants that I'm happy with, but I definitely want more if I can get more. And, overall, they're looking good. They're, again, the purpose of the plants in my garage is to keep them alive. They don't necessarily need to look beautiful because they are dormant. And then this is just another perennial mum in this container here. And over there are yet more perennial mums. Here is an annual variety of vinca. It might be a perennial in certain zones, but where I live, it's considered an annual. I believe it's hardy to zone 7. The vinca does overwinter in my zone if you have it like up next to a foundation where it gets a lot of heat, but otherwise it dies off every year. And so I've had this plant for a couple of years now, and I just keep taking cuttings and propagating it. I love to put this plant in all sorts of different containers. So I have a ton of it now. And guess what? I'm going to continue to propagate and make more cuttings. My plan is I will be showing you in separate videos how to propagate all these different plants. So be on the lookout for that. And I am noticing this poor guy over here, even though there's some life here, seems very dry. You can see if you look at the soil, it's pretty dry. So I will make sure that this gets water. But everything else seems fine in terms of moisture. They don't need any additional water. I have 5 pots of perennial mums that I bought last year, and I'm overwintering them again in the garage. I'm very pleased with how they're looking. They're actually looking really good, and I'm definitely going to be taking cuttings off of these and trying to root them. But I think overall they've done very well for just being dormant in the garage. I think next year when I plant my spring bulbs in pots, I'm going to wait until January or February because the same thing's happening this year that happened last year. Everything is sprouting and they want to see the light. They're not going to be happy if they stay in the garage. And yet it's only the end of January. And I'm kind of worried about if I bring these plants inside, I don't want to introduce any pests because they've been in my garage all this time. I don't want to introduce fungus gnats. So I'm a little torn on what to do. I could try to water these with something that controls fungus gnats because it would be nice to be able to enjoy these indoors. They definitely cannot be brought outside just yet. And these are tete-a-tete daffodils. They are so sweet and so cute. And I was able to divide a whole bunch of them and fill up this big, huge pot here. So I think they're going to put on a very great show. What do you think? Put it in the comment section. If I do bring them inside, what can I do to make sure I don't get any pests or fungus gnats? I would love any guidance on that because I do want to enjoy these. I am not a big houseplant person. I bought this last year and because I saw it at a park. It's called angel wing begonia and it's very pretty. It actually is still alive. I can see small little shoots coming off of it, like small little growth points. Like I'm not sure if you can see them, but there are a few here. There's like one right there. And they're pretty much all over. There's one right here. So when I'm doing my rooting of cuttings, I'm actually going to take a bunch of cuttings off this plant and I'm going to try to root it. And then if I do end up with a ton of plants, how nice would this look out in the garden in the summertime? So that's one of my plans coming up is to take cuttings off of this plant as well. Who doesn't love ranunculus? I have had these for a few years now and have overwintered them, and they will be coming out of storage pretty soon. I just think they're so fun. I really enjoy ranunculus. I don't know the colors. I know that I definitely have some white ones, some pink ones. I think maybe some red ones. So I have a mix, and I believe I bought them from either Home Depot or Lowe's. And you can see there's quite a few of them in there. That's the beauty of things like this, is saving the bulbs, corms, tubers, overwintering them, and then increasing your stock in the different plants that you have. I really enjoy propagating plants that way. So be on the lookout for a video. I will be pre-sprouting these soon enough. In this box here are gladiolas, and I just put peat moss in here, and there might be some peacock orchids, which are actually a type of gladiolus, mixed in here. And then there are just a ton of little baby corms as well. But you can see here's a bulb right here. And what I'm looking for when I open each of these is I just want to make sure that everything feels firm, that nothing is rotting. Because if something's rotting, I definitely want to remove it. But I'm just checking around, and from what I can feel, nothing seems to be rotting in here. So that's good. Next thing we have is tuberous begonias. All of these are in my garage. My garage does not freeze, and I check on them every month. Just want to make sure everything still feels firm, which they do. It's very exciting to overwinter plants like this. It can get very expensive buying them year after year. Yep, everything feels very good. I forget how many I have in here, maybe 4 or 5 of them. Next up, we have calla lilies. I do like using cardboard boxes. You wouldn't want to use like a plastic container. You want your bulbs to be able to breathe a little bit. And I have everything dry there in peat moss. And these look good. Again, they feel nice and firm. And what we'll notice is within another few months, they will start sprouting on their own. As the temperature changes, it's like the bulbs know and they start waking up. But we don't want them to wake up too early, especially not here where I live. And when I pre-sprout these different types of plants, I will be sure to show you the process for doing that. So even if, for example, you don't have calla lilies that you overwintered, but you want to try to do that next winter, definitely follow along, and I'll show you the process. And even though like this one right here, I can see a tiny, tiny bit of growth going on there. It's been that way ever since probably I put them in the box. So they basically have just stopped, and they will start up again once the temperatures warm up. Next, we have some peacock orchids, which again are a type of gladiolus. And I have a ton of little babies in here, and then some bigger corms. Everything looks good. I'd like to have basically a holding area for the babies to get bigger. A lot of times you can just throw away the little baby corms, but I want to be able to propagate and have more. So I just need a holding bed where I can plant these guys and give them the room that they need to get bigger. They're not going to bloom their first year. The little babies that are in here, like this one here, for example, that's not going to bloom the first year. But if I plant that and give it water, give it sun, it will still produce some green leaves. It just won't bloom, and it will just get bigger for next year. I have boxes and boxes of dahlias. Many of the dahlias I have, I started from seed a few years ago, and those plants produced tubers. And I've been storing the tubers and propagating. And then I also received a couple of bigger dahlias from a friend of mine, the dinner plate type dahlias. So what we're checking for is we're just making sure that the tubers feel firm. And also they're in peat moss, so I can tell the peat moss seems a little dry. So I'll add basically a small spray of water. I have a spray bottle, and I'll just barely mist the peat moss. You don't want to put too much water in here though, because that can cause rot. It's just enough to keep the humidity levels in there. So yeah, these look really good. I'm very pleased. I like to use shallow cardboard boxes. Last year I used much bigger, deeper cardboard boxes, and I didn't love that because I couldn't reach down at the bottom. So I like being able to use the shallow cardboard boxes. Even if it means I have a lot of cardboard boxes, I'm fine with that. And pretty soon I'm planning on sprouting some of the dahlias because I want, this one's big, so I'm not going to pull it all the way out, because I want to be able to take cuttings off of it and propagate my dahlias that way. There are a number of ways you can have dahlias. You can start them from seed. You can buy the tubers and do it that way. You can store the tubers and then divide the tubers to get more dahlias. Or you can also pre-sprout some of your tubers, let them grow so you get the leaves, and then you cut the leaves a certain way, and you basically are potting up those leaves and propagating it into another plant. And I'll be making some videos showing you the process for that. But that is another way to produce more dahlias, is to grow on your dahlias and take cuttings off of them. I have canna lilies. Now, I was definitely not happy with my canna lilies. I did not get them put into bigger pots. Therefore, they never put on a good amount of size. So my hope was to just try to overwinter them, and they do seem firm. So I really want to get them to grow on to a bigger size, and that way I can have a nice display in my yard and then overwinter bigger canna lily bulbs. But it's all right. It is what it is. And I'm actually going to buy some more this year too. I want to play around with canna lilies. I also collected the seeds of canna lilies. So together we're going to be planting those seeds and growing canna lilies that way as well. And in these pots here are just more spring bulbs that I have planted. And if you look very carefully in that pot back there, there's just barely a little bit of growth happening. Right in here, we have a lot of growth happening. So these are the spring bulbs that I'm worried about, and I want to make sure that they get some sunlight. So I'm going to come up with a plan. Another idea that I'm playing with is setting up an LED shop light in my garage and just putting any of these type of pots where there's some growth happening, putting them under the LED shop lights, just so they get the light that they need. And then when they're just barely about to bloom, I can at least have them come inside the house and enjoy them. So that's what I'm thinking of doing as one potential option. Over here are yet more spring bulbs that are ready to go. So the LED shop lights would be good for those as well. And then I just have more bulbs planted. You can see these two need water. I tell you, gardening during the middle of winter does not have to be boring. You can always find things to do, clearly, but I enjoy it. It gives me something to look forward to during the spring months. It gives me something to do during the winter months. And I love sharing this with you. Hopefully it inspires you. Hopefully it gives you some ideas. For example, in the fall, hopefully it inspires you to save your mums, especially if they don't overwinter in your area, because perhaps they do overwinter. You just didn't know it. And also with the bulbs, I'm hoping to inspire you to show you how beautiful bulbs can look in pots, or to basically push the limits with annuals that cost so much money that you can propagate from cuttings, or annuals that you can overwinter in a dormant state so that you can enjoy them again in the spring, summer, and fall. So I'm hoping that you're enjoying this content. Please hit the like button if you like this type of content, just so I know and I can make more videos like this. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.